So here we are now in the modes of discovery, which is one of the hardest portion of civil procedure. A civil case is not a case of technicalities. The rules that not want surprises in civil cases. You may lay your cards on the table. You do not keep your opponent searching in the dark, and the principle is manifested in so many rules. Example, when a defendant resorts in a specific denial, he is obliged not only to deny the allegation in a complaint, the facts are also denied. It is not fair to state that my version is false without stating your version. And if you do not make specific denial, there is a general denial and implied admission. There's also the rule that objections or defenses not pleaded in the not pleaded in the motion to dismiss or in an answer are generally waived. So if you do not invoke the defense because you want to surprise the plaintiff, you will be the one who will be surprised because courts will not allow you. This is no such thing as surprise defense because under Rule 9, defenses are not raised, are deemed waived. These provisions of the rules indicate the principle lay your cards on the table. So Section 9, Rule 15, the Omnibus Motion Rule. So we remember, subject to provisions of Section 1, Rule 9, a motion attacking a pleading under judgment or proceeding shall include all objections then available, and all objections not so included shall be deemed waived. So here we have a question. Where are the provisions? What are the provisions of the rules of court where we can say that we are laying down all our cards or we have no surprises? So the answer is in the past, we just include in our complaints ultimate facts. We do not present evidentiary facts. We now have the 2019 amendments wherein we have to include the evidentiary facts. We have to include list of witnesses, summary of their testimonies, as well as the attachment of the judicial affidavit. Attach the documents that you will be presenting to the court to that complaint. During the pretrial conference, under Rule 18, all the marked exhibits that you are going to present must be marked, and those not marked will not be included in the pretrial order. Hence, it will not be presented in the court. Also, in the pretrial conference, you will have to identify all of your witnesses because if the witness will not be included in the list or the pretrial order, then you cannot present the witness in court. This is to prevent surprises. So mode of discovery. So we have a comparison here, the ultimate facts and the evidentiary facts. So no need to be to allege in complaint and information about the evidentiary facts, no need to be alleged in the complaint information, but must be presented during trial. So in the ultimate facts, those facts which the expected evidence will support, the term does not refer to the details of the probative matter or particulars of evidence by which these material elements are to be established. It refers to the facts that the evidence will be proved at the trial. For the evidentiary facts, the facts necessary to establish the ultimate facts, they are the premises that led to the ultimate facts as conclusion. They are facts supporting the existence of some other alleged and unproven fact. But there's still an element of surprise because I am obliged to state my cause of action or defense, but I'm not obliged to state the facts supporting that defense. The rules even say that evidentiary matters should not be alleged in the pleading, but are only proved in the trial. So if I say I am in possession of particular property for 30 years, you know how I intend to prove, but you do not know how I will prove it. The kind of evidence I will present, you know the factum probandum, but you do not know the factum probans. You do not know what documents I will present in court because I am not obliged to plead a document which is not an actionable one. You do not know who is my witness are. You do not know what they will testify. So question here, but if you want to avoid any surprise, is there a way of knowing them? Yes. The correct remedy is to apply the modes of discovery while the modes of discovery are not so popular among Filipino lawyers. In America, these modes are discovery are popular among lawyers because if they see that the evidence is strong, they settle the case even before trial. Modes of discovery are not only allowed but their use is encouraged. So the question, why do we need the modes of discoveries when actually we already have the 2019 amendments wherein evidentiary facts are already included, and in the pretrial conference you have to mark the exhibits. Can it be considered as surplusage? The answer is these are not deleted from the rules of court, so this still exists. This will still prevent surprises, but like a deposition, it is like having an advanced trial before the trial. The difference is that in the preventing surprises, the pretrial conference, there is a judicial affidavit. But you see, when the judicial affidavit is presented, that's just the judicial affidavit and there is no questioning. However, in deposition, which is the mode of discovery, there's already the advanced cross-examination which will further prevent surprises. So we have here the different modes of discovery. We have the Rule 23, deposition pending action. Rule 24, deposition before action and pending appeal. We have to differentiate the two. So we have the Rule 25, interrogatories to parties, and Rule 26, admission by adverse parties. So these two are, unlike Rule 23, Rule 24, 27, 28, and 29, these two are mandatory. Failing to avail this kind of discoveries will bar you from presenting evidences that was not specifically denied. So we have the Rule 27, production or inspection of documents and things. These are similar to uh, subpoena dosis tecum, but totally different. We have 28, the physical and mental examination of persons. Rule 29, refusal to comply with the mode of discovery. So these can be read with Article 8, no, Rule 8 of the Rules of Court. So there's a bar question here. How do you distinguish Bill of Particulars from mode of discovery? So for the Bill of Particulars, it is under Rule 12, while the mode of discovery is under Rules 23 to 29. So in the Bill of Particulars, the parties can be compelled to clarify big statement of ultimate facts, but this is not an instrument to compel the other party to reveal the evidentiary facts. When a mode of discovery intended to compel the other party to reveal his evidence and evidentiary facts even before the trial stage. So these are devices of rules of court that which are intended to compel the other party to reveal his evidences before trial. You cannot compel a party to reveal his evidence by bill or particulars. Bill of particulars is only intended to clarify vague statements of ultimate facts, while evidentiary facts cannot be compelled. The remedy is modes of discovery. It's like you want to clarify something very big. You don't really you cannot really ascertain what he mean or what the other party means. This is another neglected area of the rules of civil procedure where lawyers do not seem to know how to use the mode of discovery long before the trial. I can compel your witness to reveal their testimony under oath through modes of discovery. I would not be surprised during the trial anymore because I already have a copy of your testimony under oath. And if you have some documents to present which you are hiding because they are not actionable, I can compel you by applying Rule 27. So in 2009 bar question, can the accused all avail the mode of discovery in a criminal case? Yes. There's nothing in the rules which limit the defendant's right to avail the mode only in civil cases. See in Section 12 to Section 15, the rules of criminal procedure. So first mode is Rule 23, deposition pending action o deposition de bene. So the mode this mode is most popular among the five. Deposition has two types. First, deposition pending action in Rule 23 and deposition before action and pending appeal in Rule 24. But actually, Rule 24 is not new because that used to be in Rule 134 or the perpetuation of testimony. So let's go to Rule 23, deposition pending action. I will give you a general idea about what Rule 23 is all about. Example, you are my opponent and and I know you have two witnesses, Josh and Janice. Now, of course, wait. So let's continue. Uh, how do I apply? So it's example, you are my opponent and I know you have two witnesses, Josh and Janice. Now, of course, if Josh and Janice will testify, I do not know how they will testify, but I want to know exactly what they will say during the trial, including you. So the question, how do I apply Rule 23? The answer is, I will take your deposition, meaning I will take your testimony in advance by compelling you to appear before someone whom we call a deposition officer, the judge or any judge or even a notary public who can administer oath, and then before him I will be asking now questions and you have answer under oath. Your answer will then be recorded, including that of your witnesses. Therefore, during the trial, when you are or your witnesses will testify, there is no more surprise testimony that you can give me because I already heard you in advance. You cannot contradict your answer. This is what you call deposition taking. Now, if you do that to you, you can also do that to me. The defendant can also use that against the plaintiff. So question, how do you define deposition? A deposition is a written testimony of a witness given in the course of a judicial proceeding in advance of the trial or hearing upon oral examination or in response to written interrogatories and where an opportunity is given to cross-examination. So you can see that definition in Republic versus Sandigan Bayan. This is the reason why even if the evidentiary facts are already alleged in the complaint and in the answer, even if there are judicial affidavits already attached to those pleadings, deposition as a mode of discovery will still apply. It is because the phrase or clause where an opportunity is given for examination. When I take the position of somebody, my opponent has right to cross-examine the same witness. So practically, it is a dress rehearsal for the trial when I ask question. My opponent can ask question also. The questioning of the witnesses is done the way it is done during the trial. The witness of the opponent has to undergo the same procedure in the rules of evidence. That is section 3. So section 3, rule 1332, examination or exam or section 3, examination or cross-examination, examination and cross-examination of the opponents may proceed as permitted at trial under section 3 to 18 of rule 132. So the purpose of deposition. Purpose of deposition is to impeach the testimony to the witness in case there are prior inconsistent statement. So let's question this. Distinguish a deposition from an affidavit. So the answer is affidavit is a sworn statement of a witness taken ex parte. So there's no cross-examination. While the deposition, there is a cross-examination. There's a confrontation as if he is already testifying in the court. So section 1. Deposition pending action. When may be taken? Upon ex parte motion of a party, the testimony of any person, whether a party or not, may be taken by deposition upon oral examination or written interrogatories. The attendance of the witness may be compelled by the use of subpoena as provided in Rule 21. Deposition shall be taken only in accordance with these rules. The deposition of a person confined in a prison may be taken only by leave of court on such terms as court prescribes. So here, deposition taking under section 1 presupposes that there is a pending civil case, which is why the title is deposition pending action. There is an existing civil case and I would like to take the deposition of a certain people. You cannot use Rule 23 if there's no pending case. So here, when a party or a witness is examined and cross-examined outside of trial or hearing, the testimony of the witness is revealed so that the party can prepare. So when deposition may be taken. Upon ex parte motion of the party, the testimony of any person, whether a party or not, may be taken by number 1, deposition upon oral examination, meaning he will be questioned by the lawyer of both sides, examined or cross-examined. Number 2, deposition upon written interrogatories. Those are the two. So question, whose testimony may be taken during deposition taking? So the answer is any person, whether a party or not. Another question, who can ask for deposition taking? Answer is any party upon ex parte motion. Another question, how can an attendance of witness in a deposition be compelled? And by use of subpoena as provided in Rule 21. So that was subpoena testificandum. So in the case of Republic of the Philippines versus Sandigan Bayan, the general rule is the plaintiff may not be permitted to take deposition before answer is served. Plaintiff must await a joinder of issue because if the discovery is to deal with matters relevant to the case, it is difficult to know exactly what is relevant until some progress has been made toward developing the issues. Ordinarily, the issues are made up before the need of discovery arises. Hence, prior to the time of delineation of the issues, the matter is in control of the court. There are instances, however, when a deposition is allowed to be taken before service of answer once jurisdiction has been acquired over the person or thing. Leave of court may be granted only in exceptional or unusual cases, and in the decision is entirely within the discretion of the court. It should be granted only under special circumstances, where conditions point to a necessity of presenting a strong case for allowance of the motion. There must be some necessity or good reason for taking the testimony immediately, or that it would be prejudicial to the party seeking the order to be compelled to await joinder of issue. If the witness is aged or infirm or about to leave the court's jurisdiction or is only temporarily in the jurisdiction, leave may be granted. A general examination by deposition before answer, however, is premature and ordinarily not allowed. Neither is mere avoidance of delay and sufficient reason. In the case at bar, petitioner alleges that the taking of Mr. Gapo's deposition in lieu of his testimony is necessary because the allegation in the complaint are based mainly on his disclosures regarding the business activities of President Marcos and Lo Xutan. That although Mr. Gapod was granted immunity by the President Aquino from civil and administrative suits, has been out of the country since 1987 and has no intention of returning, fearing for his safety. And this fear arose from the damaging disclosures on the illicit activities of the cronies and business associates of former President Marcos, which therefore renders him unable to testify at the trial. So let's go now to section 2, the scope of examination. Scope examination, unless otherwise ordered by the court, as provided by by section 16 or 18 of this rule, the deponent may be examined regarding any matter, not privilege, which is relevant to the subject of the pending action, whether relating to the claim or defense, or any party, including the existence, description, nature, custody, condition, and location of any books, document, or other tangible things, and the identity of locations of persons having knowledge of relevant facts. So question, when you take the deposition of a deponent, what can you ask? So what matters may be inquired into? So the answer is the law says the deponent may be examined regarding any matter, whether related to the claim or defense of any other party, provided it is not privileged matter. You cannot take deposition when it's covered by privileged communication. So example, suppose there's a case between me and somebody and I suspect Pedro knows something about facts, but I am not sure. So I will take his deposition. I will start asking question to Pedro, wherein practically I'm groping in the dark. I just start I just start asking questions left and right, hoping that I may stumble into something about the case. So the question is that allowed? Yes, it is allowed. Precisely, the mode of discovery is a fishing expedition in the hope that you will discover something in the course of a questioning. If I already know a fact that is nothing to discover, it is very broad that I may discover something in the course of questioning. You can ask the deponent any matter related to the claim or defense, but there are limitations. So the first limitation is the matter inquired into not privileged under the rules on evidence or special law. So section 24, rule 130. Number two, the matter inquired into relevant to the subject of the pending action. So that is section 4, rule 128. And the court may issue orders to protect the parties and its deponents under section 16 or 18 of the same rule. First limitation, the matter inquired into not privileged. So the privileged communication under Rule 24, Rule 230, Section 24, the communication between husband and wife, attorney and client, physician and patient, priest and penitent, and the public officers and public interest. And so in other privileged matters, that includes editors may not be compelled to disclose the source of published news. Voters may not be compelled to disclose for whom they voted. Trade secrets, information contained in the tax census, returns, and bank deposits. So the second limitation is the matter inquired into is relevant to the pending action. While the deposition taking authorizes a fishing expedition, you are not allowed, however, to go beyond the topic. Example, you will ask the witness about the incident which happened and she was supposed to be there. Where were you on this date? I was there. Who was with you? I was with my boyfriend. When did he become your boyfriend, or how often you date with each other? Or what is favorite color? My Those questions are irrelevant and no connection. So the third limitation is the court may issue orders to protect the parties and opponents under Section 14 and 8 or 18 of this rule. So while it's true that leave of court is not necessary anymore, you have to remember that it is related to a pending case and the court has control over the case. That is why we leave of court is not necessary. Any party who is aggrieved who can go to court and complain, and the court is authorized to issue orders to protect the parties and its deponents under Section 16 or 18 of this rule. So let's have a question. In what proceeding can deposition be used? So the answer is it can be used later during the trial of the case or in supporting or opposing the motion. A good example is a remedy of summary judgment under Rule 35. Under this rule, a party can file a motion for summary judgment to demonstrate that the party has no cause of action. In that sense, I support my motion with affidavit, deposition, or documents. So let's go to section 3. So here, cross-examination of the opponents may proceed as permitted at the trial under section 3 to 18 of Rule 132. So let's go to section 4, the use of deposition. At the trial, the hearing of the motion of an interlocutory proceeding, any part or all of the position, so far as admissible under the rules of evidence, may be used against or any party who was present or presented at the taking of the position or who had due notice thereof in accordance with any one of the following provisions. Any deposition may be used by any party for the purpose of contradicting or impeaching the testimony of the deponents as a witness. The deposition of any party of anyone who at the time taking the deposition of an officer, director, or managing agent of a public or private corporation, partnership, or association which is a party may be used by an adverse party for any purpose. C. The deposition of a witness whether or not a party may be used by any party for any purpose of this court finds. So number one, the witness is dead. Number two, the witness resides at a distance more than 100 kilometers from the place of the trial or hearing. Number four, that and number three, the witness is unable to attend, testify because the age, sickness, infirmity, or imprisonment, or the party, number four, the party offering the deposition has been unable to procure the attendance of the witness by subpoena, even if they tried. Or the application notices or upon application or notices that the such exceptional circumstances exist as to make it desirable in the interest of justice and with due regard to the importance of presenting the testimony of witness orally in open court to allow the deposition to be used. And letter D, if only part of the deposition is offered evidence by a party, the adverse party may require him or her to introduce all of it which is relevant to the part introduced, and party may introduce the other half. So question, in what proceeding may the deposition be used? So the answer is number one, the trial. Two, upon hearing of a motion, right, the Rule 25 of summary judgment, or upon hearing of interlocutory proceedings like issuance of writ of preliminary injunction or attachment. The question here, against whom may a deposition be used? So the answer is against following. Number one, against any party who was present or against a party who was represented at the taking of the deposition or against a party who did not appear or represented but was duly notified of the schedule of deposition taking. So the procedure of deposition taking is first to notify the other party of the date, place, time of the deposition taking of a person. The other party is free to go there and participate. If the person appeared and participated, he is bound by the deposition. If he fails to appear but sent a representative, the same effect. The person is bound. Suppose a person received the notice but never bothered to go or participate, he is still bound because the law says, for as long as you are notified, you are bound. So whether you will come or not, you are bound by the deposition. In this case, you might as well show up. So this one of the procedure in which clients do not understand. Sometimes you will receive a notice from the opposing counsel that he is going to take the deposition of your client and witnesses. The client usually will oppose because they think that the only time you are going to tell the story is in the court and not in the office of attorney or attorney so and so. The lawyer has a hard time explaining the position taking to the client because laymen do not usually know this. They do not know that the other party could compel you under the law. The process of deposition is so hard that to explain to layman, he does not understand why the witnesses can be compelled to testify long before the trial, not inside the courtroom, but in somebody's place and everything is recorded and under oath. Just make sure to convince your clients to believe you. So question, can a deposition substitute for oral testimony? So the answer is no, never. A deposition can only be used for purpose of contradicting or impeaching the testimony of the deponent as a witness. It does not exempt the witness from testifying in the court. So impeaching testimony, what is this? To impeach his credibility or to discredit his testimony in in so that it will not be credible before the court. So general rule, a deposition cannot substitute an oral testimony. So what are the exceptions? As mentioned in Article 4, Rule 4, Section 4 of Rule 23, that the witness is dead, that the witness resides at a distance more than 100 kilometers from the place of trial or out of the Philippines unless it appears that his absence was procured by any party, by the party offering the deposition, or that the witness is unable to attend to testify because of age, sickness, infirmity, imprisonment, or the party offering the deposition has been unable to procure the attendance of the witness by subpoena or upon application and notice that such exceptional circumstances exist as to make it desirable in the interest of justice. And with due regards to the importance of the present, the testimony of witness orally in open court to allow the deposition to be used. So for in summary, if it's the position of the witness, it is only used to impeach the testimony of that witness. The witness should still be presented in court. If it is the position of the party, it can be submitted right away. And that the position will be part of the records, the case, but it should be formally offered for it to be admissible. So let's do the distinction. So in Rule 23, Section 1, so what it means, the testimony of any person may be taken by deposition upon oral examination or written interrogatories at the instance of any party. While in Rule 23, Section 4, deposition may be used without the deponent being actually called to the witness stand by the proponent under the certain conditions for a certain limited purpose. So here, for good cause for prevention of the availability of the proposed deponent to testify in the court does not constitute good cause to justify the court's order that his deposition shall not be taken. While the witness in Section 4, the witness is unable to attend or testify is one of the grounds when the deposition of the witness may be used in a court during trial. So the rights, the utmost freedom is allowed in taking deposition, while in Section 4, restrictions are imposed upon their use. In limitation, in Section 1, the limitation other than relevancy and privilege has been placed. So in Section 4, subject to circumscriptions, looking forward the use of oral testimony whenever practicable. So what we should remember here, the deposition is never intended as an easy substitute for actual testimony in court. The principle, therefore, to remember that is in the deponent's testimony must be repeated in court for it to be admitted as evidence. The deponent is not exempt from testifying in the court. As a general rule, an exemption is when the deponent is an adverse party under paragraph B. So A here, any deposition may be used by any party for the purpose of contradicting the impeaching testimony of deponent and witnesses. So let's say example, I will take the deposition of Mr. Malaki, a possible witness. After listening to his testimony is in my favor. I will tell the court during trial that my next witness is Mr. Malaki. But since he is busy and his deposition is taken beforehand, I will no longer present him, but instead I will present as evidence his deposition to take the place of his oral testimony in court. So the question is that allowed? Can a deposition substitute for his oral testimony? So the answer is no. Deposition can only be used for the purpose of contradicting or impeaching the testimony of a deponent as a witness. It does not exempt the witness from testifying in the court. It is only means to knowing what the witness will testify. So when you take the deposition of a witness, you are already assured that this will be his story. If I ask you the same question in the court, naturally, he will have to hit the same answer. So there will be no more surprise. If I am asking question identical to my deposition, I expect the answer to be identical during the trial. So another question, suppose the witness during the trial reverses testimony. His testimony in deposition is favorable to me, but during the trial is favorable to the opposing party. So answer is, I can now use his deposition to destroy him. Uh, destroy. I will impeach him by showing that the witness is not reliable. To impeach the testimony of a witness is to destroy his credibility. I will offer as evidence the deposition for impeachment purposes. This is known as prior consistent statement. Under this rule of evidence, they cannot change the story during the trial because I can impeach them. Therefore, a deposition is not the substitute for testimony of the witness in the court. You also still have to present him in court. He has to testify all over again, but at least already have a guideline. So if he deviates from the deposition, you can impeach him during the deposition taking under oath earlier. So letter B, deposition of a party or anyone at the time taking the deposition was an officer, director, or managing agent or a public or private corporation partnership associate, which is a party, may be used as an adverse party for any purpose. So question, what is the difference between paragraph A and paragraph B? So in paragraph A, if it is the deposition of a witness, not a party. In paragraph B, it is the deposition of the party himself. The paragraph A, the deposition of a witness can be used for contradicting or impeaching the testimony of the deponent as a witness. The deposition of the party can be used for any purposes, so it is broader than the first in paragraph B. So let's have an illustration. Suppose I will take the deposition of my opponent, so the adverse party. I have already record of his testimony during the trial if he testifies contrary to the deposition. I could use it to impeach him, but suppose the deposition is in my favor. I could present the deposition as an admission in my favor. I could use it as evidence against my opponent. Therefore, I can use it as an evidence and or I can use it as a tool to impeach the contradict the other party. In other words, the deposition of mere witness is for strict purpose of impeachment only. And the deposition of the adverse party is for any purpose because I can use it to impeach or I can use it as evidence. And if the witness says some things in my favor, I cannot use it as an evidence. I have to ask the witness to repeat his statement in court. But if it is evidence, if it is a party, I can use it as evidence already in the rule on admission of evidence, and that the act or declaration of a party may be used as evidence against him. So that's found in Rule 130, Section 26. So that in difference between the deposition of a party and a witness. So question, suppose the adverse party is a corporation. And under the paragraph B, you can take the deposition of any of its officers and directors and managing agent of corporation. So take note, if the party deponent makes admissions that are favorable to him, such admissions do not bind the adverse party. These admissions are in the concept of self-serving admission and are therefore inadmissible. So self-serving evidence, what is that? Is evidence made by a party out of court at one time and which is favorable to the party making it. It is included in the same ground as have hearsay evidence, that is lack opportunity for cross-examination by adverse party. And on the consideration that its admission would open the door to fraud and to fabrication of testimony. So what is the requisite in self-serving evidence? Number one, the testimony is favorable to the declarant and it is made extrajudicially. And number three, it is made in anticipation of litigation. Reason for inadmissibility. So number one, a man may safely believe that he declares his own interest, but not if he advocates his interest. So that is in the case of Licauco versus Atlantic Gulf and Pacific Co. It is excluded on the same ground as hearsay evidence, that is lack of opportunity for cross-examination by the adverse party. So let's go to paragraphs. So when subserving or favorable admission are admissible if made in open court. So number one, of course, in made in open court. Number two, giving full opportunity to adverse party. Number three, to exercise his right of cross-examination. So let's go to paragraph C. The deposition of a witness, whether or not the party may be used in any party purpose of the court's finds. So again, if the witness is dead, the witness resides more than 100 kilometers from the place of trial or hearing or out of the Philippines unless it appears that his or her absences was procured by the party offering the deposition, or that the witness is unable to attend or testify because the age, sickness, infirmity, or imprisonment, or that the party offering the deposition has been unable to procure the attendance of the witness by subpoena or upon application then a notice that has exceptional circumstances and exists as to make it desirable in the interest of justice with due regard to the importance of presenting the testimony of the witness orally in open court to allow the deposition to be used. And lastly, if only the deposition is offered in evidence by a party, the adverse party may require him or her to introduce all of it which relevant to the introduced and the party may introduce to other parts. In paragraph C, an exceptional an exception to the paragraph A only applies to the position of witness for contradicting or impeaching his testimony. It is only in paragraph B which applies the use of deposition for any purpose but it refers to the position of the adverse party. Now, in paragraph C, allows the use of the position of a witness for any purpose. So, here, stated otherwise that the necessary implication that the instances referred to in paragraph C are also exceptions to the principle of a deponent is not exempt from testifying in the court. A deposition taken under paragraph C can be used as substitute for oral testimony. So, for that question, I will take deposition of one who is a witness. During the trial, my next witness is one. Do I have to present one or only his testimony in deposition of witness? So the answer is I have to present the witness one because under paragraph A, the deposition is only good for impeachment purposes but not a replacement of his oral testimony. So another question. Suppose when I am about to present Juan during a trial a day before he died. So I have no more witness. Can I now present his testimony in the position of evidence? So the answer obviously yes. Under the rule, the law, this deposition will take the place of his oral testimony because he is dead. However, if he is alive, apply paragraph A. You cannot substitute his deposition of his oral testimony. Now, it is true that when you take the deposition of your own witness, you are supplying the other party a means to impeach the testimony of your witness. But if you look at paragraph C, it is also important to take the deposition of your witness. The purpose is just in case your witness will die before he can testify in court, at least if you took their deposition earlier, you are lucky. So here, let's go to witness not found. First, let's go to witness resides in a distance more than 100 kilometers from the trial or hearing or is out of the Philippines. For example, my witness is from Cebu. Under the rule of subpoena, I can compel him to come to Davao and testify in the case because of the 100-kilometer rule. The remedy is to go to Cebu and take his deposition there. When the case is called in Davao, I will tell the court that my next witness is from Cebu and the distance from Davao is more than 100 kilometers. So I will have no choice but to take his deposition there. In this case, I can offer as evidence his deposition to take the place of his oral testimony, and that is allowed as exception to paragraph A. So if your witness is leaving for abroad, you might as well as take the deposition before that's too late. And you might end up without witness that is advantage the paragraph C. So witness is not found. So if I'm able to procure the attendance of my witness by subpoena, means that the witness can no longer be found, his whereabouts is already unknown, or but I was able to take his deposition earlier. So let's go to if only a part of the deposition is offered in evidence. So let's have an illustration. Suppose I will take the deposition of Juan de la Cruz. The first part of my is in my favor, but when he was in cross-examined by the other party, he clarified that his answers turned out that his original answer were not really in my favor. So there are two parts of the deposition. Part one, in the general question, the answer seems to be in my favor. And in part two, excuse me. So in part two, when the question were specific, turned out that it was not in favor. If I am a lawyer, I will offer the part one as my evidence because it is in my favor of my client. The other party will present the other part. In evidence, the party is not obliged to offer the evidence document, which is are against his cause. It is now the job of the other lawyer to offer the part thereof. That is Section 17, Rule 132. So if this is so, the picture created will only be half of the whole picture. Is this unethical i- in suppressing the truth? No, I am not suppressing the truth. Lawyers are not allowed to lie. Nowhere in the legal ethics is being espoused that lawyers are told to lie. In fact, must be honest and true of the administration of justice. It is lawyer of the other side who has absolute right to complete the picture of offering the other half. I'm not under obligation to help the other side. A lawyer has no obligation to present everything. He is only under the obligation to support the interests of his client. What is unethical is when you present something against the interests of your client. It is not twisting of truth. No, it is not twisting of the truth. It is changing the facts. I not changing the facts of the story. I am only presenting one side of the story. But definitely the other party is not precluded from testifying to present the other half of the story. If the party fails to present the other half of the story, that is their problem. Do not blame me. So let's have a discussion. There are two things wrong about this case. No, no, no. So let's go to section 5. But first, let's read from People versus Web. People versus Web, in its ruling, the Supreme Court reversed the appellate court's decision and upheld the trial court's denial of Hubert Webb's motion to take deposition in his US-based witnesses during trial. The court emphasized that the deposition, being pre-trial discovery tools, are generally meant to be taken before the trial, not during it. And subject to discretion of the trial judge. It found that the proposed depositions were merely cumulative and will not add significant value that the proposed deposition to Webb's defense, as documents they aimed to support had already been admitted or presented multiple times in the court. The court also noted that due process had not been violated since Webb was given an ample opportunity to present his evidence, and the trial judge acted within the reasonable grounds in disallowing redundant testimony. Therefore, it ruled that no grave abuse of discretion was committed and that certiorari was not warranted, reaffirming that discovery procedures like deposition are not absolute rights, but are subject to judicial discretion and proper timing. So, this is applicable to criminal proceedings and can be taken in consular office pursuant to Section 11 under this rule. So in Land Oil versus Mangondadato, the Supreme Court denied the petition for lack of merit. Upholding the findings of the Court of Appeals, it ruled that the petitioner improperly raised factual issues and failed to justify its absence, and that if the counsel and pretrial, which was mandatory under the rules, the petitioner motion for new trial lacked valid grounds as an illness and termination of the counsel's services were insufficient excuses, especially since no formal withdrawal of appearance was filed. The court held that instead of filing a motion for new trial, the petitioners should have first filed for reconsideration and consider of the order allowing ex parte presentation of evidence, and its failures to do so reflected negligence. The court also found no convincing proof that the petition did not receive the trial court's order denying its motion, citing that the presumption regularity of official functions. However, it agreed that the deposition of petitioners' witnesses were proper under the Rule of 24, Section 4, Paragraph C, 2 of the Rules of Court, as witnesses resided more than 100 kilometers from trial court. Ultimately, the deposition failed to establish non-receipt of denial order, and the decision and resolution of the court appeals were affirmed. So, a deposition may be taken at any time after the institution of an action. So let's go to section 5. Effect of substitution of parties. Substitution of parties does not affect the right of to use deposition previously taken, and when an action has been dismissed and another action involving the same subject is afterward brought before the same parties or their representative or successor in interest, all depositions lawfully taken and duly filed in the former action may be used in the latter as if originally taken therefore. So question here, what will the heirs do if the plaintiff dies? So the answer is they will substitute the plaintiff under Rule 3. So when the plaintiff substituted by the heirs and there is already a deposition before the substitution, what will be the effect of the substitution to the deposition that was made? So the answer is Section 5. One can still use the deposition because it will not affect the rights of the use of deposition which was previously taken. The question, plaintiff filed a case against defendant. Depositions were already taken. Later, one of the parties died and there was substitution. Is there a need to take depositions against? Will the deposition already taken be also applicable to the same case, although the parties are now different? So the answer is yes. The substitution of the parties does not affect the right to use depositions previously taken. So another question. Julina files a case against Maya, and the deposition were taken. Later, the case dismissed without prejudice. Um, Julina refiled the case. It is necessary for deposition to be taken all over again. So the answer is no need. The deposition taken in the dismissed case will still apply to the new case. There's no need of repeating the whole process because it's generally the same. It was dismissed without prejudice. So let's go to section 6. Objection to admissibility subject to provision section 29 of this rule. Objection may be made at the trial or hearing to receiving the evidence of the position or part thereof for any reason which would require the exclusion of the evidence if the witness were then present and testifying. So when the objections admissibility of the position may be made. So first, at the trial. So second, at the hearing. So question, when what are the grounds for objection? So the answer is any reason which would require the exclusion of evidence if the witness were then present and testifying. So another question, can you object to the evidence present which is being offered during the deposition taking? Of course, yes. However, the deposition officer cannot rule, but the objection is recorded and it is judge who will rule on objection later during the trial. So let's go to so what we must remember here is it may only be recorded and the judge will rule the court proper. So in section 7, effects of taking depositions. A party shall not be deemed to make a person his or her witness for any purpose by taking his or her deposition. So we know that deposition taking is a fishing expedition. If after taking a witness deposition, he knows nothing, then he is useless as a witness to me. You are not my witness. If after taking a deposition, it turns out that everything you say is against me, I am bound by your testimony? No. In fact, it is the other party who will use you as his witness, but definitely you are not my witness. So let's go to section 8, the effects of using deposition. The introduction in evidence of the deposition or any part thereof for any purpose other than that other than that of contradicting or impeaching the deponent makes the deponent the witness of the party introducing the deposition, but this shall not apply to the use of by an adverse party of a deposition as described in paragraph B of section 4 of this rule. So the general rule is by simply taking your deposition, it will not make you as my witness, but once I offer your deposition in court, you are now my witness, especially if you are dead or when you are residing more than 100 kilometers. So the exception here is meaning even if I offer it to court, still it does not make you as my witness. When I'm offering my your deposition to contradict or impeach you. So when I am offering your deposition to show the court that you are a liar, I'm not making you as my witness. So number two, when you offer the deposition of your opponent, the adverse party, you are not making him as your witness. This that is obvious. Take note that anything that your opponent says in the deposition in favor of you will bind you. But if it is not in your favor, it will not bind you precisely because he is not your witness. He is not expected to say something in your favor. And so in section 9, let's go. Rebutting deposition. At a trial or hearing, any party may rebut any relevant evidence contained in a deposition, whether introduced by him or her or any party. Just like a witness in court. If a witness says something in court, you can just always prove that that is not true. If it's a deposition, the same thing, you can always rebut the truth. So before whom deposition are taken, if the deposition is to be taken within the Philippines, who are authorized to act as deposition officer, so that is section 10. So section 10, 11, and 12 must be read together. So section 10, person whom depositions may be taken. Within the Philippines, deposition may be taken before any judge, notary public, or the person referred in section 14 hereof. So in section 14, it's the stipulation of parties. So question, if the deposition is taken in the Philippines, who are these persons before whom the deposition are taken? So answer is one, any judge. So it's not necessarily the judge acting on the case. In fact, you can request a judge in Manila to be the deposition officer, and he will not be one to decide. He's only the deposition officer. Number two, notary public. A notary public is authorized by law to administer oath. Take note that not all lawyers are notary public, and to be notary public, you have to apply for commission in the part of the place where you are practicing. If you are notary public for Davao City, you cannot be a notary public in any other place. And usually, a commission for notary public is only good for 2 years. And after 2 years, you have to reapply. So in persons referred in section 14, so in let's read section 14. Stipulations regarding taking of depositions. If the parties so stipulate in writing, depositions may be taken before any person authorized to administer oaths at any time or place in accordance with these rules, and when so taken may be used like other deposition. So the parties may stipulate in writing that the deposition officer may not be judge or a notary public. It can be other person who is authorized to administer oath, such as prosecutors, clerk of court, who is lawyer, labor arbiters. Anyway, there are also authorized to administer oaths, like barangay captain. Is not authorized. So let's have a question here. If the position is to be taken abroad, who are authorized to act? So the answer is found in section 11. Persons before whom the position may be taken in foreign countries. So in a foreign state or country, the position may be taken, letter A, on notice before the Secretary of Embassy or Legation, Consul General, Consul, Vice Consul, or Consular Agent of the Republic of the Philippines. Letter B, before such person or officer as may be appointed by commission or under letters rogatory. Or C, the person referred in section 14 hereof. So we have read the section 14. So the amendment here again is the person referred in under section 14. So a secretary of the Philippines Embassy or consulate abroad is authorized to act as the position officer as well as consul general or vice consul, although in Supreme Court circular, if the judge will have to authorize the taking of the position abroad as leave of court is required, you you course it through the Department of Foreign Affairs. The parties are not supposed to communicate directly to the Philippine Embassy. Take note of that. So let's have a question. How about the places where we do not have embassy? It's a question. So the answer is those with country where we do not have diplomatic relations, you have to avail the B, which is before such person or officer may be appointed or commissioned under letter rogatory. So we will discuss that later. So in this case, the person who is authorized to take the deposition may be commissioned or by letters rogatory. So let's go now to section 12. Commissions or letter rogatory. A commission or letter rogatory shall be issued only when necessary or convenient on application and notice and on such terms with such direction as are just and appropriate. Officers may be designated in the notices or commissions either by name or descriptive titles, and letters rogatory may be addressed to the appropriate judicial authority in the foreign country. So this is to ask the court to issue a letter rogatory to ask someone in foreign country or foreign court to take the deposition. So the commissions are addressed to specific individuals and letters rogatory are addressed to foreign judicial authorities. So by commission, through somebody other than Philippine consul, like in Taiwan, we have a Philippine Trade Department. The court will issue a commission to the head of trade mission there to act as the position officer or any person appointed by the court judge. Or I mean, appointed by the judge by court order. So example, suppose I would like to take the deposition of somebody who is staying in Afghanistan, who will have no consulate, but I know of a Filipino lawyer who resides there. I will request the court that is a Filipino lawyer abroad to be authorized to take the deposition of a person there. If the court agrees, it will issue what is known as commission. But suppose none at all, the court will send letters rogatory addressed to the courts of a foreign country. So what is letter rogatory? It's an instrument whereby the foreign court is informed of the pendency of the case and the name of the foreign witnesses and is requested to cause their deposition to be taken in due course of law for the furtherance of justice and with an offer on the party of the court making the request to do the like of for the other in similar case. So example, the case is in Davao. We live in North Korea. And Davao, let's say Wilson lives in North Korea and Paulo should file a motion in court for the court to issue a letter surrogatory. The judge will make a formal communication to the court in Pyongyang to please take Wilson's deposition with the following request to mail back the answer and offer to return the favor. If the request is ignored, there is nothing that we can do, but normally they comply. So the letter surrogatory is a request to appropriate foreign judicial authority to take a deposition of a witness who is in their jurisdiction. And please send us a copy. We assure you in the future, if you have the same problem, we will reciprocate. That is international law. A deposition can be understood by the officers in other countries because it is internationally known. But if the officer is in a court of foreign country will not do it, we have no choice because it is only a request. Wait, I am low bat. So the Supreme Court defined again commission and letters rogatory distinguish other than the case of Dasmariñas Garment Incorporated versus Reyes. Supreme Court upheld trial court's order allowing the taking of depositions by commission in Taipei, Taiwan, ruling that depositions are valid mode of discovery and may be taken at any time even after pre-trial. The court clarified that while depositions are generally not substitute for live testimony, they are admissible under exceptions, such as the witness is outside the Philippines. The court dismissed petitioners Dasmariñas' objections, including the lack of diplomatic relations with Taiwan, and claims unfairness, stating that what mattered was the position's conformity with procedural rules and due process, particularly the right to cross-examine. The court also found that the trial courts acted within the discretion and that the motion for reconsideration was improperly filed. So let's go to section 13. Disqualification by interest. No deposition shall be taken before person who is a relative within the sixth degree of consanguinity or affinity, or employee or counsel of any parties, or who is relative within the same degree of employee or such counsel who is financially interested in the action. So you are disqualified to act as deposition officer if you are related to any of the parties of the lawyer or the or parties or the lawyer. You get somebody who is not related. Under what provision does this situation fall? The Supreme Court combined all three provisions. Commission should be appointed by court. That is why the consulate had it ratified instead. The Supreme Court said, yes, we have procedures, but there are times that it is necessary to be creative in the sense that this is not allowed. We do this instead. This is already considered as substantial compliance. So question, can a party to a case not appear and only send his deposition? That is what happened in Rodrigo Dulay. Well, answer is, well, it would seem that it is not, it is allowed, like it is allowed. It is impliedly allowed. It was not questioned at all. The plaintiff is not required as or she, um, he or she in the Philippines for as long as the proper signature are there. So special power of attorney and all. So let's go to section 15. How many more? Depositions upon oral examination. Notice, time, place, party desiring to take deposition of any person upon oral examination give reasonable notice in writing to every party to the action. The notice shall state the time and place for taking deposition of the name and address to each person to be examined. If known, and if name is not known, a general description sufficient to identify him or her or the particular class or group which he belongs. On motion of any party upon whom the notice is served, the court may, for the cause shown, enlarge or shorten the time. This is a question and answer described and recorded under oath. So there's two types of deposition taking. Deposition upon oral examination and upon written interrogatories. The former is governed by Section 15, which is the most popular question and answer, so everything is recorded. So the oral examination asks question akin to a court witness will answer. In written interrogatories, question will be prepared by the requesting party and his and her lawyer. It is the deposition officer who will ask the question and to ask the witness of the other party, not the client nor his or her lawyer. In oral deposition, direct examination, cross-examination. While in written interrogatories, when the counsel prepares the written interrogatories and serve it to the deposition officer, and the deposition officer is the one to ask the witness or the deponent, then the other party is also has to prepare the cross interrogatories and then to submit it to the also the deposition officer and then ask to the deponent. Afterwards, a cross-examination will be conducted. So take note, before deposition is taken, there should be notice to the adverse party. That is important. The notice shall state the time, place for taking the deposition, and the name and address of each person to be examined. So the last sentence, on the motion of any party whom the notice is served, the court may, for cause shown, enlarge or shorten the time. Suppose you will send me a notice that you will going to take the deposition of a witness from February 1 to 20, morning and afternoon. 20 days is too much. I can go to court and complain that should be reduced. That should be reduced. The court may come and enlarge or shorten the time. The court may also do this even if leave court is not required. So let's stop here first. Let's have a break.